Wow, what a Miami Grand Prix that was. Lando Norris got his first ever win in F1 and did it in some style. Who had that on their bingo card at the start of the week? I definitely didn't. I actually thought the Miami GP would be a bit of a boring weekend. The past two races we've had here have been kind of undesirable, a lot of left to be desired in my personal opinion, especially when it comes to the race out front. But wow. We actually saw for the first time in 2 years, probably, or at least kind of the start of 2022, where Ferrari really took it to the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, toe-to-toe for performance. That's the first time we've seen a car actually outperform the Red Bull on merit. Now, there'll be people disputing that, of course, with the safety car that came out, but we'll discuss that in a second, because I think Lando just put everyone to shame today. He shut up all the doubters, myself included. I said he bottled it, and I still think he bottled it from the sprint qualifying session on Friday. He was nailed on for pole position, and we saw the pace that McLaren, with the brand new upgrades on Lando's car, Piastri didn't have those this weekend, but still did a great job, even with his unfortunate incident with Carlos Sainz and receiving damage with that front wing, which ruined a good weekend for him. But yes, Lando, there was a lot of doubters, once again, saying he kind of folded under pressure, can't get it across the line when it matters. And, well, he proved everyone wrong, because he started in 5th place and was just such a mature drive. You saw it when we was doing the watch-along, but he was behind Perez. He was trying to force Perez into a mistake, but he wasn't going for a move, lunging it down the inside or going for any lunges, doing anything stupid to potentially cause him to have damage, but also to lose any unnecessary time to the cars ahead, because quite evidently, as soon as he was released, once Perez came into the pit box, he just set fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap, and there was about 5 laps between Lando Norris getting released by Perez and until Max Verstappen did eventually pick up damage from the wiping out the cone at the chicane. Now, we didn't know if he'd had any damage to the underfloor of the car, but when you actually watch it back, you can see, and it's very hard to see, it's easily missed at the time, you can see that the back end of the car, some bits of carbon fibre, fly off the car as the floor bounces on the base of where the cone was. So he did have damage. Red Bull confirmed that after the race. But I will say, Max Verstappen, it was just so happy for Lando Norris, and credit to him, because I think a lot of the media were trying to kind of push this narrative, understandably, and people are just defending Max in the fact that, well, the only reason he didn't win was because of the safety car and because he got damage. That's the only reason why. That wasn't the case. The Red Bull was definitely not at the races here this weekend. We don't know why. Maybe it's because it's a temporary track surface and it might just be an anomaly on the calendar. Imola will be a good barometer in regards to how the McLaren's upgrades have worked in regards to closing that gap to Red Bull, but they definitely were the quickest car here this weekend. Well, at least Lando's car was. As we said, Piastri didn't have those upgrades. And yeah, Max, in the interviews afterwards, was just stated, I struggled on the mediums, wasn't really able to get the performance out of them, and then on the hard tyre it was even worse. He could have quite easily mentioned, yeah, but it was because we had damage, but he didn't. He knew that this was Lando's moment. He's a good friend of Lando, of course. That's well documented. And in the interview, post-race interviews where you've got the podium drivers, someone asked Lando, oh, well, you wouldn't have won this because of the safety car possibly, would you? And Lando was like, well, I would have had to have overtaken a few more cars. And Max just butted in and said, with great line, it's all ifs and buts. If my mum had balls, she'd be my dad. Spot on, Max, because quite evidently people were just trying to not put this down to, one, a great drive from Lando, and two, the performance gains of McLaren. And look, there's going to come a point, and it always does come a point towards any regulation set, that teams do catch up. And the team that has been dominant kind of reaches a ceiling in the performance. They can't gain anymore. And it's natural that other teams will eventually catch up. And hopefully, this is that moment. Hopefully. Now, as I said, because it is a temporary surface, and because the deg isn't really that high, here it's very kind of a unique surface. We saw drivers all throughout the weekend struggling to switch the tyres on. But the Red Bull, I mean, Oscar Piastri in the early stages of the race was, as soon as he cleared Charles Leclerc, was on pace with Max Verstappen. Max wasn't gaining whatsoever. A couple attempts maybe every 5 laps. But yeah, he definitely wasn't gaining on Oscar Piastri. And this is all before he suffered that damage, where, of course, it did give him a performance loss. He did lose time. However, Lando Norris was just on fire in this race. As soon as he was released, it was an amazing drive for him, mature. And then, of course, we got the safety car. Now, would he have won this race without the safety car? I think so. Now, if he pitted under the safety car and came out even behind Carlos Sainz and his teammate, who were ahead of him, and Max Verstappen, I think he would have cleared those easily. McLaren would have given Piastri the team order, and Lando just had the pace. He would have got past the Ferraris quite comfortably, who didn't have upgrades here this weekend, but still maximised the performance that they've had each race. The Ferraris are doing very well this year thus far. Big upgrade coming for them, supposedly, in Imola, which we'll get to shortly. But yeah, I think he would have overtaken Max, definitely, especially with his damage that he had. But even so, just when he was on that medium tyre and he was extending the stint, he was going quicker and quicker and quicker as the fuel was burning off. Max was really struggling on the hard compound tyre, obviously with a bit of damage as well. And yeah, he potentially could have built up a free pit stop. I think it was 11 seconds in the end, but the gap was when Lando came in with a safety car. Of course, a free pit stop with the safety car. I was worried at the time, but he'd missed it. The safety car had come out too late, but thankfully he was ahead, and it was then the safety car kind of came out at the wrong time and then allowed the pack to then close up behind Lando Norris. I was a little bit worried there for a moment, I won't lie to you, but yeah, it was a great drive from him, and no one on that track today could handle Lando's pace, and it's a thoroughly well-deserved win. And as I said, it's shut up a lot of doubters now. He's got that monkey off his back, as they say, and I think this will be the first of many. And there's many drivers up and down this grid, if they're given the car, they will put in performances like that. So yeah, we'll see. We head to Imola in a couple of weeks' time. I'm intrigued to see if those upgrades work again at Imola on a more traditional circuit where Red Bull have dominated as well in this new regulation set, particularly in Max Verstappen's hands. So let's see how they get on there. Lando also has good form at Imola as well, having a couple of good qualifying sessions there. I can't remember if he's had some podiums. I think he has since we've headed back to Imola. So yeah, hopefully Imola is going to be as interesting as this Miami Grand Prix was, which I did not expect at all, but I'm always happy to be pleasantly surprised. So yeah, well done Lando. Everyone in the watch along and everyone up and down the paddock was so happy for him, because they know how much of a nice guy he is, and a talented driver he is. And obviously he came so close in Sochi, and if it wasn't for the dominance of the Red Bull, would have had a win in that McLaren a lot sooner, but that's just the way of F1. So yeah, hopefully this is the first of many and not just a one-off, which I'm sure it won't be, because he's a talented guy. So yeah, well done Lando. You shut me up and you put the doubters, shut up the doubters, and yeah, I'm sure he enjoyed his night in Miami, which, looking at social media, it does seem like he did. Now, just touching on Oscar Piastri, we'll round off with the McLaren. Oscar Piastri had a really good weekend, considering he was in the McLaren that didn't have the upgrades, and of course McLaren wanted to use that as a data point to compare the upgrades that they've brought on Lando's car against the current car that they had. And yeah, Oscar was doing a great job with that non-upgraded car, and clearly had performance level with the Ferrari. for a period of time, had a very good performance against even the Red Bull, especially of Max Verstappen, but he just couldn't break away from the toe of Carlos Sainz behind and Charles Leclerc after overtaking them. And yeah, he just got caught up in some dogged fights with Carlos Sainz. Of course, Carlos Sainz wasn't happy with the first initial move down into turn 11 at the fake marina. Thought he wasn't afforded any room as he was forced out wide. It's the new racing rules, unfortunately, which I don't agree with. I think you're alongside should always be afforded room, but look, it's the my corner thing that is part of modern F1, which I don't agree with, because we've got Logan Sargeant and Magnusson to discuss, which is a very kind of hot topic, because I actually think the stewards got it wrong, but we'll mention that in a few minutes. But yeah, great performance from him overall. Really unfortunate with the incident with Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri down into the back straight where he got the front wing. Carlos Sainz just lost the rear under braking, locked up the rears, and his rear tyre slid into Oscar's front wing. Could Oscar have left more room? Potentially, yes, but ultimately Carlos Sainz has received a 5-second penalty because they deemed him at fault for that incident. Is it a harsh penalty? Probably, I think so. I think it's more so a racing incident and hard racing between the two. That is a rivalry to keep an eye out on, guys. Piastri and Sainz. There's been a little bit of digging away, little jabs here and there, especially like in practice sessions and so forth, little flippant comments between Oscar and Sainz throughout practice sessions, and they've come together a few times now in races since Oscar's introduction last year, and they've just keep an eye out on that one, because that one's going to get tasty, and I think this is just the start of what will be a future rivalry between those two. They obviously there's not plenty of no love lost between those two, let's say the least. So that's one to keep an eye on. Oscar's very kind of calm and collected off the track, but when it comes to on the track, these drivers, of course, are very different when they're in the cockpit. So yeah, interesting that one. But look, we love to see racing. That's what we want to see. I just do wish that drivers leave a little bit more racing room, but that's not the rules now these days, unfortunately. Both drivers could have done more to avoid that contact. Unfortunately for Oscar, it ruined what was a good weekend for him and would have been a real good haul of points for McLaren. But I'm sure McLaren would have ripped every single limb off of your body for a race win this weekend, especially for Lando Norris. So yeah, overall, Oscar should be happy knowing that he's going to be getting upgrades on a car that actually work. So he has that excitement for Imola to look forward to. So we've already touched on Red Bull and Max Verstappen in particular, but the Red Bulls in general, even in Perez's hands, of course, we know Perez is not at the same level of Max Verstappen. However, he has been comfortably finishing P2 behind Max Verstappen and secured a number of 1-2s this season thus far. But yeah, a track that Perez went very well at last year, qualified on pole position, and both the Red Bulls just didn't look happy all weekend. The sprint qualifying, of course, Max was on pole but didn't feel comfortable. The sprint race, he only finished 3 seconds ahead of a Ferrari that hasn't brought any upgrades. If Lando, it's a what if really, Lando could have potentially, I think, won both races this weekend if he qualified further up in the sprint race. Of course, we know what happens with that incident down into turn 1. But yeah, I think there's a potential here that the McLaren of Lando Norris could have got both race wins, and the Red Bull just didn't seem happy. I don't know if it's the track surface, as I said. Don't know if it's because, I mean, they quite evidently couldn't switch their tyres on as quickly as they normally do at other circuits. So yeah, we'll see. I really hope, I do really hope that this is just a genuine closing of the performance gap of McLaren to Red Bull. Of course, Ferrari have upgrades coming as well, so hopefully that brings them closer, and they're also part of that group challenging for wins now. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, Max was, let's just talk about Sergio Perez. Oh my God, how close was he to taking out Max Verstappen at the start of the race? Oh my God, the reaction of Max after the race in the post-race in the cool-down room was just one of absolute disbelief, because it was inches inches. Every single time I see that clip back, I'm waiting for him to just make contact with Max, and it's just so close, so close. He's just obviously not looking at Max ahead, misses his braking marker because he's very focused on the Ferraris alongside him. That could have ended absolutely terribly, and it worked out well for Charles Leclerc, because Charles Leclerc had a very poor start, lost a couple of positions off the start to his teammate in Perez, and then because Sainz had to take avoiding action, Charles Leclerc just went into the free space and regained his second position, and of course Oscar went through as well. So Sainz, great awareness from him that he saw Perez coming through, because that could have been a massive incident down into the first corner. Imagine the social media if Perez did that and wiped out Max Verstappen at the start of the race. Oof. But I'm kind of glad that he didn't, because we would have, if Lando won this race with Max Verstappen out of the race, of course, we still would be sitting here applauding Lando and still having the adoration for him. However, the fact of it, he's beaten Max out on circuit. Yes, he had a bit of damage, but out on circuit and was quicker than him in the early stages of the race. It is a much better way to do it, rather than the questions of, oh well, he only won it because Max went out, you know. Whereas the fact of it, he's beaten Max out on track and just set the lap times and drove off into the distances, is a much better way to do it. So yeah, not a good weekend for the Red Bulls. We'll see, of course, what if they're able to recover that performance in Imola. As we said, a more traditional circuit. I assume, I do have a sneaky feeling that it's just because of the uniqueness of this temporary circuit. I think Imola might be a little bit more normal process resumed, but I hope not. I hope that those upgrades from McLaren have done the work as intended, and yeah, this is a genuine performance increase by McLaren to close that gap on Red Bull. So yeah, we'll see. Then Ferrari, and well, just Ferrari are so different under Fred Vasseur, aren't they? So different. You can see the improvement that they've made, and you can see that they're just maximising the performance out of that car. Once again, I mean, Charles Leclerc, what a performance from him this weekend, on the back foot from the get-go after his spin, and only doing 2 laps in FP1, bringing out the red flag. To put it on P2 in sprint shootout is, yeah, one of the qualifying sessions in a long time from him. Absolutely unbelievable that. And then to get a P2 in the sprint race and then a P3 in the main race is great. Only finishing behind, of course, Lando's in a league of his own and Max in the Red Bull. So yeah, that Ferrari, just, we've seen it this year that they haven't really finished outside the top 5. There's hardly any points separating Carlos and Charles in the Drivers' Championship. Of course, Carlos did miss Saudi and could have finished, could obviously be higher than Charles. We'll never know. But yeah, those two, not a lot to separate them this year. Charles, in the last couple of races, has really responded to, of course, the criticisms of his performances, that Carlos has been the driver of Ferrari. He's the one who, of course, the story that he's leaving. Have they let the wrong driver go? Kind of tongue-in-cheek. He's responded to that really well. Yeah, this weekend, while it was a quiet race for him generally in the full race, got overtaken by Oscar and then retook that position. Never really couldn't really stay with Max. Lost a lot of time through the slower corners, through the marina and through that chicane. You could see it on the data that Max in that Red Bull just kept putting away from Charles. Once he lost that DRS, he just couldn't stay with the cars in front of him, of even Oscar Piastri, actually. I think it was only due to a mistake or a slight wobble from Oscar that he was able to stay with him and overtake him. But yeah, a great performance, a great weekend from him. Carlos, unfortunately, of course, had the 5-second time penalty issued to him post-race. So he's finished 5th place and lost only 1 position to Sergio Perez. Otherwise, it would have been a 3rd and 4th position for the Ferrari drivers. He's done okay this weekend, been outperformed by his teammate quite comfortably, I think you can agree with, and another solid performance from him. A bit miffed, of course, about his fight with Piastri. As I said previously, Stay tuned for that one. I think that's going to be a rivalry to keep an eye out on for the future. But upgrades coming, highly rumoured. There's a big upgrade package coming in Imola. So hopefully Ferrari will be sitting there looking at McLaren and hoping that their upgrades have the same effect and can bring them much closer to Red Bull or ahead of McLaren and Red Bull. Because considering they had no upgrades, still had good pace here this weekend. So that car has massively improved. And as well, we need to applaud the pit stops. Very swift pit stops from the Ferrari team, which of course we have not been used to seeing for a number of years now. Fred Vasseur has come in, he's sorted out evidently the pit crew and the strategy side of things, which I think we all agree needed to be improved. And yeah, overall, a solid weekend from them that they'll take many positives from. Just a shame that Carlos got the 5-second time penalty. Bit harsh, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to talk too much more on it. It's just kind of hard racing. It's what we kind of want to see. But yeah, not bad from Ferrari. Then Mercedes, well, what a race it was from Lewis Hamilton, to be honest with you. I thought the Mercedes, I didn't really think they were going to make up any positions today. We know that they've made a bad car, qualifying where they did in the sprint shootout, not even making it through to Q3, and then yeah, bringing out the medium compound tyre in the last run of Q3 for the main race. Just really indicates that, yeah, they know they don't have anywhere near the pace to be kind of on that front row or even on the second row at the moment when it comes to qualifying. So, yeah, really strange from them. They split their strategies. I thought they would have at least gone for the hard compound tyre for George Russell as well. But it worked a treat for Lewis. Didn't work a treat for George starting on the medium, which is the more preferred strategy. And yeah, Lewis just completely outperformed George Russell on this race. Finished around 16, I think it was 17 seconds ahead of George. Might even be more than that, actually. But yeah, what a result it was for Lewis Hamilton, finishing in P6, but did get stuck behind Sergio Perez. He had a bit of a tangle, of course, with Nico Hulkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda, but anyone who thinks Lewis Hamilton is washed just needs to go back and have a look at some of those overtakes and wheel-to-wheel racing that he had throughout this Grand Prix. He's definitely still got it. Like many of these drivers do, if you give them the car, they will put in the performances, and hopefully he is hoping he's going to have that when he moves to Ferrari next year. But yeah, that Mercedes is just, they're having to run such a higher wing, just such a higher downforce setup to give them stability through the corners. And yeah, the other teams are able to run skinnier wings, gain more top speed, and still have the stability that is required through those faster corners. It's just more rounded, well balanced than the Mercedes car. And yeah, that was very evident as Lewis got caught behind Sergio for about, I think, the last 15 laps. Definitely at least the last 10, and just could not get past that Red Bull, even with DRS assistance. So yeah, that just shows how draggy that Mercedes is. But Lewis maximising really the performance of that Mercedes and putting in a good drive where I didn't expect to see, to be honest. I expected him to kind of finish where he started. But yeah, had some good battles, and that alternative strategy worked for him. George Russell, just a poor weekend for him. Just a poor weekend overall. Don't know if it was because of setup. Don't really know the ins and outs of it. But yeah, quite evidently, clearly outperformed by his teammate Lewis. So he'll be looking for a better performance in Imola in a couple of weeks' time. But still, points on the board for him, 6th and 8th. Not overall terrible for the Mercedes teams. But of course, it's not where they want to be. And it's not where they used to be in. But to be honest, nothing is going to change drastically between now and the new regulations. They just fumbled it, haven't they, with their concept, and they are a year behind in development. So yeah, not great going for Mercedes fans, but if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, positive is that you can look forward to him moving to Ferrari next year, who do seem to be heading in the right direction. And then we need to talk about VCARB, which I hate saying, but VCARB AlphaTauri, what a change of fortunes for both drivers. It was different ends of the scale for Danny Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. They had opposite weekends Yuki, a very poor sprint shootout and sprint race, but a great qualifying and a great race, finishing P7 on Sunday. And then we have Danny Ricciardo, who just shocked everyone by qualifying P4, out qualifying Red Bull driver Sergio Perez in the sprint shootout, and then holds off Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri for the duration of that sprint race, finishing P4. Unbelievable. We thought that, well, this means that he's surely going to have a good qualifying and a good race, and for some odd reason, just the tyre warm-up, as we saw throughout the weekend, they just absolutely fumbled their tyre warm-up or their outlap for Q1. And if you watch the onboard lap of Danny Ricciardo, it's like he's driving on ice. It's nothing to do necessarily with his ability. He just showcased that the day before. It's purely that he didn't get enough temperature into the tyres on his outlap. Whether that's because, I don't know, he didn't have enough time to get round and do his lap, so they put him out too late, and he had to rush his outlap, so couldn't properly prep the tyres. But yeah, it's definitely what he didn't do, was prep them, and just slid around all over the place. And then because of a resulting penalty from the sprint race, where he apparently overtook under the safety car, I don't remember seeing that, he ended up starting from dead last. Now, he did finish in P15, so he gained 5 positions, but really only 2 of those positions were actually out on track. Oscar Piastri, of course, pitting to the back. Sargeant going out. Magnusson as well, of course, because of his incident with Sargeant. That's why he only really overtook Valtteri Bottas. Actually, it's only 1 position, because Lance Stroll had a 10-second time penalty at the end added in. So that 15th isn't really reflective of 5 positions gained for Danny Ricciardo out on track. It's only 1, and that's on Valtteri Bottas. So yeah, very different opposite weekends for Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. Yuki, credit where it's due. He has a bit of a pattern forming, or has been having a bit of a pattern forming in sprint race weekends, where we only have this 1 practice session to dial in your setup, the limited amount of practice compared to the extra 2 hours you get with FP2 and FP3. He has struggled with that, and has struggled on sprint race weekends. Now, the rule has changed this year, where you can change your setup in between the sprint session and the qualifying session. So you can gather data through the sprint shootout and the sprint race and make alterations to your setup for the race on Sunday, or the qualifying and then the race on Sunday. Whereas last year, when sprints were introduced, you had that 1 practice session and your setup was locked in for the whole weekend. That's where Yuki struggled. But whereas this weekend, and similar actually kind of in China, he did improve on qualifying and the race. But the sprint race and the sprint qualifying, he's not able to really dial in the setup after only an hour of running, it seems. And yeah, had a much better qualifying performance, and then a much better race, finishing in 7th, actually having some good wheel-to-wheel battles as well with Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, and just completely outperformed George Russell. Completely outperformed him. Was watching the timing sheets, and the lap times he was doing were at least 2 tenths faster per lap quicker than George Russell, pretty much kind of all race. So yeah, a great drive from Yuki. Continuing on, a great start to the season for him. Danny Ricciardo, it's a shame, because people will think of recency bias. As the usual saying goes, you're only as good as your last race, which is kind of technically true, but I think there's too much emphasis put on that. But Danny Ricciardo will be very much kind of torn in 2 minds, that yes, it was a great weekend, but also what could have been with the qualifying and the Sunday race. So yeah, overall though, I think a great performance from that team and from both drivers, and both of them should be going away very positive. But of course, they'll be also thinking about where they can improve moving forward. But yeah, if you're a Daniel Ricciardo fan, I think you kind of just got to look. But unfortunately, that 1 mistake that he made in qualifying cost him for the race on Sunday. Just focus on what he can do and what he is capable of with that great performance in the sprint shootout and the sprint race itself. Shows that he's still got it, and he is by far all means washed. And Yuki, well, yeah, good recovery from him. He'll be looking to carry on that performance, a great P7 into Imola in a couple of weeks' time. So we're going to take a little bit of an interval here and diversion away from the rest of the field, because I want to go in and discuss what was the incident that brought out the safety car, which was Logan Sargeant and Kevin Magnusson coming together at turn 3. They had a battle throughout the last corner that went all the way, or turn 17, technically not the last corner, but I see it as the last corner at the end of the back straight. And they went down to the first corner where Magnusson went side by side with Sargeant, did the cut back on him, and he got a great drive round the outside of turn 2, heading into turn 3. Now, they came together because Logan Sargeant didn't see Kevin Magnusson on his outside, which, in fairness to Logan Sargeant, is difficult to do because these cars are so much larger. They're the largest cars we've ever seen, and the peripheral vision is not great in these cars. It's very difficult for drivers to kind of know when cars are alongside them. The blind spots are much larger than they have ever been in F1 history. So in a very quick left-right corner, I do understand how he didn't see Magnusson there and turned straight into the corner. However, where I have a difference in opinion, especially to the stewards, and to that of Martin Brundle, I don't think Kevin Magnusson was at fault for that incident. I think Kevin Magnusson had every single right to be where he was going through that corner. He got a very good traction out of turn 1, was more than alongside Logan Sargeant as they were heading into turn 3. And as we said, Logan just doesn't know he's there in a very quick section of corners and just closes the gap. Contact is made with Magnusson's front left and Logan's right rear, and Logan goes straight into the wall. Of course, his rear wing is broken. Magnusson is able to continue because it's only his front wing that's got damage. And I think it's completely wrong that Magnusson has been issued a 10-second time penalty for that, and also some penalty points. Apparently he's only one more incident really from getting a race ban. And while I don't agree, and he overstepped the mark in the sprint race, and rightfully so, got penalties for that, this was not anything like that. And of course, the stewards think that Magnusson probably should have backed out or took avoiding action to remove himself from that position. But Magnusson is not like making a late lunge here. Magnusson at the point of contact, well, before the point of contact, has his left front tyre along halfway up Logan Sargeant's chassis. Like, you need to be warranted. Surely you're warranted room for that, even though you're on the outside. Now, is it because of the new racing rules that F1 introduced a while ago? Whereas at the point of an apex or into a corner, it's your corner and you have the right to completely run the other driver on the outside of racing room. I'm pretty sure that kind of changed a little bit. And if someone is if their rear wheel is alongside, your front wheel is alongside the rear wheel, you're entitled to racing room. I thought that was the rule. Now I could be wrong, but in that whole scenario, I think Logan is just okay. He didn't see him, but he still cut across in front of Magnusson, who was alongside him. Now, is it because of the lack of peripheral vision that is in these cars, and that needs to be looked at? Hence why the new regulations with slightly narrowing the cars and the length of the cars ever so slightly to maybe better increase that peripheral vision and get closer and ensure closer racing. But yeah, I don't agree with that penalty whatsoever. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but I think it's just an unfortunate racing incident. I think it's more on Logan. I think Logan's just turned into him. I get why he wouldn't have seen him, but I don't see how you can put award a 10-second penalty to Kevin Magnusson there. He's entitled to bit. Do we want to see racing or not? I don't think Magnusson... I think Magnusson should be expected to receive racing room there. I don't think he should be expected to completely take avoiding action. It's all happened very quickly, but he's got more than alongside him. It's not like his rear wing's just at the back, or he's only just got his front wheel alongside his rear wheel. He's more than alongside. So yeah, strange one that. I thought it at the time when we saw it, and I still stand by that as well. I know others have, other real-life racing drivers as well have also kind of said the same thing, supporting that. Martin Brundle, I don't know, a few of his takes recently, I'm not sure what he's watching. Of course, he's a lot more knowledgeable and a lot more experienced than I am. Of course, he used to be a Formula 1 driver back in the day, and he is a very good pundit and a very good commentator. However, I'm not entirely sure that some of the calls that he's made and observations he's made recently, I'm kind of like, are you watching the same race, Martin? I'm not sure. So yeah, let me know what you think about that one in the comments below. But I think Magnusson was not at fault for that. I think he was entitled to be there. He was entitled to racing room. He wasn't afforded it, and I think a 10-second penalty to him is very harsh. I haven't seen any comments from Magnusson in relation to that, but I can't imagine he's too best pleased. So yeah, let me know what you think. So let's talk about the Aston Martin team now. This is always one of my favourite parts of the weekend, or post-race weekend, is seeing how far ahead Fernando Alonso finished compared to his teammates, the chosen one, Lance Stroll. Because Lance Stroll actually had a better qualifying than Fernando Alonso. He started 4 positions ahead of him. But of course, come the end of the race, that wasn't the scenario, because Fernando Alonso recovered really well, had a really good fight with Esteban Ocon, which I thought was going to get very, very tasty. It did get tasty, but I thought there might be some wheel banging, but they both played ball, fought hard, and on the limit. And yeah, Esteban Ocon sneaked Alpine's first point position, which was a much better performance from them this weekend. They seem to be heading more in towards the right direction than where they started. But yeah, Fernando Alonso, great recovery drive from him, finishing P9 in the end. One of the few drivers to still score points in every single race this season. And yeah, then we have Lance Stroll. I don't even know what happened to Lance Stroll. I looked at the leaderboard, and I just saw that he was like down 6 positions or at some point. And I was like, how has he got there? How is Lance Stroll down 6 or 7 positions? And then he was fighting it out with Alex Albon. He picked up a few off tracks, and then he finally got that last off track by going wheel to wheel with Alex Albon, which picked him up a 10-second time penalty for too many track limits violations, which meant that he eventually finished in 17th place. Yeah. 8 positions down, 7 positions down, however many it is on his teammate who finished in 9th. So, yeah. We all know my opinions on Lance Stroll. We all know everyone's opinions on Lance Stroll. And, yeah, I thought with him starting 11th, you maybe think, okay, yeah, like you might actually have a decent result here. For him to start 11th and then finish 17th with, from my understanding, no issues with the car whatsoever, and for his teammate to finish that many positions ahead of him and in 9th, scoring 2 points, is just, yeah, just funny. Just makes me laugh. It's not really much else to say, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's going to be more of it throughout the rest of the season and next season and the season after, however long he decides to stay in F1 for, unfortunately. So, yeah. And then as we head down further the grid, not really too much else to say about these drivers, unfortunately. Pierre Gasly in 12th place. The Alpines, as we just mentioned with Ocon, did pretty well. They performed much better here this weekend, so they're heading in the right direction. But really, they're still competing with the likes of Haas and really like the AlphaTauris. It's not where they want to be competing, but yeah, that team's in a bit of a shambles at the moment. They've just made a very high-profile replacement. I think it's their chief technical officer they've just hired as well. So yeah, Alpine, I still have suspicions that they might not even be in F1, or at least under the same guise in 2026. So stay tuned for that one. But Esteban Ocon and Gasly, by the way, credit where it's due. Of course, we know that there's no love lost between those two. They're not best friends by any means. But they went side by side through turns 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Basically, you know the chicane and turn 16 onto the back straight where Charles Leclerc lost it in FP1. They went side by side in those modern F1 cars, like so close to so close by, and fair play to both of them for keeping it clean. And it was great to see. I didn't think I'd ever see cars go side by side through there, let alone teammates. So if you get an opportunity, go back and have a look at the highlights. It happened early on in the race, I think the first couple of laps, but wow, that was literally heart in mouth moment watching those two, just expecting them to crash at any moment. But yeah, great racing and car control from both of those. But yeah, Ocon at the moment is getting the better of his teammate. He is getting the better of his teammate. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out throughout the rest of the season as the cars get more, if the cars improve in performance. So yeah, good weekend for them. Hulkenberg just missed out. He got very bolshy with Lewis Hamilton, didn't he? Almost nearly running him into the wall. Very close racing from him. But yeah, just missing out on a point there for Hulk, but quite clearly the better of the two Haas drivers this year. And yeah, he's rightfully earned his seat at Audi. Zhou Guanyu, okay performance from him, but yeah, that Stake F1 car just doesn't have what it takes really at the moment to finish in the points positions. But he did comfortably beat his teammate, who was down in 16th. So yeah, he had the better of Bottas all weekend. Bottas with a brand new engineer, nearly crashed into Oscar through in qualifying. Do you remember that? How they didn't make contact there, I don't know. But Valtteri, yeah, change of engineer there, maybe had issues with that, lack of confidence in his pit wall. But yeah, the Stake F1 car is definitely not ready to be earning points, that's for sure. They need some very big fortune and luck to finish up in the points. And then Alex Albon, yeah, Alex Albon was going okay until he kind of got into that battle with Lance Stroll, had a massive lockup into the Marina section, which caused him to pit because of a massive flat spot. So yeah, that's why he finished down. But the Williams is really struggling at the moment. Definitely the weakest car on the track at the moment. Albon did show flashes of like slight improved performance this weekend, but yeah, it's when it comes to race day, they're definitely not at the races, and there's a lot of work to be done with that Williams team. Of course, the big kind of news that happened over this weekend, alongside of course the Andretti news with Congress and Adrian Newey, is that Kimi Antonelli. So it's highly rumoured that Logan Sargeant, this was his last race in Williams. Now, of course, that has been refuted by Toto Wolff and James Vowles, but do we ever trust what really comes out of their mouths when it comes to that? The big telltale sign that this is potentially Logan Sargeant's last race is that Kimi Antonelli, who is yet to turn 18, he will do during the summer of this year, has had a request, a special request by Mercedes to gain him a super license. Now, there's no reason for them to do that unless he was going to be put into an F1 seat. I'm pretty sure you don't need a super license to do practice sessions, because that's the whole idea of putting F2 drivers in there. But do an actual race, you need a super license. And yeah, if you're under 18, you need special approval by the FIA, and they have requested that. I don't know if it's been approved, but yeah. Why would you request that if he's not going to be in an F1 car for at some point this season? It may happen a little bit later, but I think, and it's highly rumoured, that Imola is where Kimi Antonelli will be making his debut in the Williams car. He's done 2 tests in the W12 and the W13 there, and he is also, I think it's his home track, Imola, as well. Only grew up down the road, I believe. He's Italian, so yeah, it'd be a great debut for him. And who knows how long he'll be in that seat for. I think if it's not Imola, it's only a matter of time. And yeah, Logan was having a quiet weekend, not a great weekend. A typical Logan Sargeant performance, shall we say, that no one really notices. Languishing at the back, of course in a car that's not great at the moment, but clearly being outperformed by his teammate week in, week out. And then for him to have that incident with Magnusson, it's just, yeah. If he had any hope of retaining his seat, I think, well, it's been long gone. But having that incident and crashing out again like he did, where you could say he should have had more spatial awareness. I don't think Magnusson, as we've already stated, was at fault for that incident, and had every right to be there. But still fighting for, like, what were they fighting for? 18th, 19th position at the time. Yeah, just kind of says it all really, and not a great way for him to potentially end his F1 career if this is his last ever F1 race. So that's pretty much every driver and team on the grid. So overall ratings for this race. Now, how would I rate this race? Now, I know lots of people, I've seen criticism that there wasn't that much fighting for the lead. People want to see, of course, wheel-to-wheel fighting and overtakes happen for the lead of the race. I get that. However, I think we have to take into consideration the period of dominance that we are in F1 right now, the most dominant period ever, and the fact that someone has beaten a Red Bull based upon performance and not from luck, in my opinion. I think the data and the timings suggest that Lando had the pace on Max prior to him picking up that damage from that cone anyway. I think, yeah, I think it was a great weekend. I think it was a great weekend. The sprint race in itself, a lot left to be desired, I think. Of course, with everyone on the same tyre. Yes, there was some action. There was the first corner incident. I think the sprint race in itself was probably, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10, to be honest with you. I think truly there wasn't too much that happened, apart from Magnusson really going across the line, going beyond that line of defending from Lewis Hamilton. Other than that, what truly happened? Daniel Ricciardo comfortably in a VCARB car defended from Carlos Sainz. It was great to see, but from a racing perspective, I don't think that sprint race was as much of a success as what I've seen some people make it out to be. I'm still not a fan of sprint weekends. I still think that they detract away from what is the actual race on Sunday. But look, I understand that it's not really, I don't think it's still really aimed at us people watching from home. I think it's aimed at the people who are there going to track, so that they have something tangible to watch every day that has value to it, rather than just practice sessions. So I do get that, but yeah, still personally not a fan. So that's the sprint race. And then the race on Sunday, as I just said, while there wasn't an overtake for the win, I still think I would give this race probably a 7.5 out of 10, because there was a lot of action behind. There was a lot of wheel-to-wheel action as well, more than I was expecting, and I was pleasantly surprised about this race. My expectations were very low because of how kind of low deg this track is. We saw Max Verstappen take the hard compound tyre last year, 47 laps. Bearing in mind it's only a 57 lap race, and I thought we was going to see more of the same. And I did think, as I think we're rightly allowed to think, we expected more dominance from Red Bull and probably an easy win for Max, and it didn't turn out that way. And the strategy really kept things interesting. Even without the safety car, I think things would have been very interesting, and probably even more interesting. We would have actually got that on-track overtaking that people were hoping for out up front, because I think Lando still would have had more than sufficient pace to overtake Max in the end. He even admitted that. Max even admitted it, but yeah, I think even without the safety car, he would have caught me at some point with that many laps remaining. So yeah, Red Bull just weren't at the races, and I think it was a 7.5 out of 10. If we had a actual kind of wheel-to-wheel fight up front, then I think that's the only way that kind of my ratings are going to increase in regards to races at the moment. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10. Maybe because my expectations were so low. If they were a bit higher, then maybe I would have rated it a bit lower. But look, we got a brand new winner. Bearing in mind we've only had 3 race winners in the past 2 years. That is Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz, because of course Carlos Sainz, only other driver to win last year, and of course he won Australia. And now we have a brand new winner for the first time in 2 years, and a first time winner in Lando Norris. So yeah, that's it for me. He's definitely my driver of the day. There's no doubt about that. A great performance from him. Yuki Tsunoda is in second, I think. Great drive from him. Maybe Fernando Alonso in third, bringing it up in 9th position. A good recovery drive. And then yeah, I think I do like to give a donkey of the day, and I think that could probably go to Sergio Perez for the start. Oh, I mean, yeah, so close. so close to just taking out his teammate and Carlos Sainz at the start there. Very fortunate. And then I think we can award a second donkey of the day in Lance Stroll for just picking up more penalties and starting 11th and finishing 17th. Just, yeah, not really much more else to say about Lance Stroll. But yeah, that's my race review, guys, of the Miami GP weekend. We head to Imola in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll see what happens there. Upgrades, pending upgrades for Ferrari. Will those upgrades of McLaren still have the intended effect at a more traditional race circuit? And will Red Bull be able to recover on what has been their first poor weekend since Singapore last year? They haven't had many in this new regulation era. But yeah, are we starting to see that ceiling be reached in their performance and the other teams finally catch up? We can only hope so. So yeah, Imola in a couple of weeks' time for the first time in 2 years after, of course, those tragic floods last year. So yeah, it'll be thoroughly welcome to head to a great race circuit like Imola. So yeah, I'll catch you in a couple of weeks' time for our next watch along, which was really successful. I'm just going to sign off with just saying thank you very much for everyone who keeps tuning into these watch alongs and these F1 videos. The community is growing massively, and yeah, I love F1, and so do you guys too, and I'm always here to chat about it. So if you want to chat more F1, Discord link is in the description below. You can join there and chat with like-minded F1 fans. And yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and we'll see you for the next one. Bye.